again, and this time we're going to be talking about the thing that I hate the most, cigarettes. So I really don't understand why it's even okay to sell them. It's such a bad drug. It doesn't do anything good for the body or for anyone. And so you can never speak too much about this topic. So let's start from the time the tobacco leaf is found. It already starts having devastating effects on the actual tobacco farmers, which unfortunately happen to be from the developing parts of the world, even though the tobacco is going to be shipped to the developed parts of the world. And so these farmers who are basically doing it so that they can put food on their family's table, they're actually suffering for it, because actually the nicotine that is in a cigarette is not just in the cigarette, it's in a tobacco leaf. Okay, the leaf itself has nicotine, and when you are planting these leaves and when you're reaping the crop and everything, once it's wet, or especially when it's wet, that nicotine from in that leaf can actually seep into their blood and they get nicotine sickness. And this nicotine sickness actually makes them vomit, makes them nauseous, makes them have headaches, sends them to the hospital for a while. They have to recover, they become dehydrated. And so they're doing it to put food on their family's table, but they're actually suffering for it. And this is all to fuel an industry that is killing people daily. So it's really mind-boggling. So starting from the tobacco leaf itself, we already have damage being done to human beings. Upgrade that now to the cigarette itself, which has harmful chemicals in it that no one would actually ever ingest or inhale for themselves. So you'd never purposefully go put your mouth next to a car muffler and inhale black fumes, because you would know that that's not something you should do. While the carbon monoxide that's in there can also be found in a cigarette. You'd never purposefully take things like arsenic and cyanide, because those are poisons. They're literally found in rat poison, whereas you can find some of those things in cigarettes. So there are carcinogens, which are things that cause cancer. In cigarettes, no one would purposefully want to ingest a carcinogen, and yet we have people smoking these things. And the worst part about it is that cigarettes do not only affect the person that's smoking it, but people around them, and so other people are being affected even if they do not smoke. People mostly know that cigarettes are bad for the lungs, because anytime you're putting chemicals that will form a black sticky tar in a lung, which is supposed to be nice and free so that air can pass through it easily, that's obviously not going to turn out very well. So yes, smokers do have a problem with breathing. Eventually they will destroy their lungs to a point where it's difficult for them to breathe, and they get something called COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. Most people know that it's also bad for the lungs because it causes lung cancer, and cancer is obviously devastating. While those two things, cancer and COPD, are extremely horrible diseases to have, that's not all that cigarettes do. One thing that I always say makes cigarettes a really bad drug is that it damages your blood vessels. And from the time you damage blood vessels, anything can happen. You have blood vessels that run in every part of your body, and so if you have damaged blood vessels, all of the different organs are all not getting enough of their blood supply, not getting enough oxygen, and so they will slowly and surely start to die and start to deteriorate. Okay, and so it doesn't only cause cancer of the lung, it also causes cancers of many other places, including the bladder, including head and neck cancer. So anything that happens around hair, in the throat, in the salivary glands, all of these cancers, cigarette smoking is a risk factor for it, okay? And so it's not just lung cancer, it's many cancers. And it's not just cancer, it's things like strokes. So a stroke is just a clogged blood vessel in the brain, or at least that's one type of stroke. It can also be a bleed into the brain. Both of those things are caused by being a cigarette smoker. It's also things like heart attacks, because again, a heart attack is just a clogged blood vessel on the surface of the heart. And that's what smoking does. It damages your blood vessels until they start to get clogged, and then blood cannot properly pass. It also causes things like kidney failure, because the kidneys really like to get their blood supply. Kidneys take 25% of your blood volume, and so they really like to have their full amount of blood going towards them. When you have clogged arteries, this is going to block blood from flowing to your kidneys. And so there is not a single organ that cigarettes do not affect. There's a higher risk of amputations, especially of your lower limbs, like your toes and your feet and coming up. And that's because those blood vessels down there are really tiny. You damage them, it means that blood's not going to flow properly down there. And slowly, the toes start to die. They start to rotten away, and then we have to take it off, because if we don't take it off, the rest of the foot will start to die, and then we'll have to be amputating bigger and bigger areas. Okay, and so this is really not a drug that should even exist, and it should be taken as seriously as any of the other drugs that are called illicit drugs out there. And even though cigarette smoking might be legal, it is certainly not good, and it damages the body. On top of that, when people smoke cigarettes, they have a filter. Like, cigarettes have a filter at the top. However, that person standing next to them does not get a filter, and so they get that smoke directly into their lungs, okay? Which means that they get all of the negative stuff without the filter. So it's even worse for secondhand smokers. When smoke remains on your clothes, and then you go home and there are children there, and these clothes go into your dirty clothes area and they stay there for a while, that is third-hand smoke, actually smoke that's coming off of things that are around you, and again, just as harmful. So I'm really against cigarettes, and I wish that one day no one would smoke. But in the meanwhile, I will just enlighten as many people as I can, so that less and less people will smoke. That's all for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.